Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Next Gen Racing Season 20 BMW M4 Faster League. I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and we are back at trackside at Autodromo Nacional Monza for what is expected to be an incredibly tight and very high-speed, high-intensity race around the legendary Italian circuit. We're now almost at the halfway point. 2/3 the way, not quite, almost at the halfway point, and just over the third of the way into the season, and it has been one great season so far, a very close season, not without its highs and lows, its controversies, its dramas, but nonetheless we continue on tonight and we press on for another intense night of racing. Now, for the uninitiated, what's this league all about and why are we expecting it to be fast and frantic? Well, it's a Sunday league, which means it's one of those leagues, much like in the real world. In sim racing, you turn up and race, you bring along your BMW M4, in this instance your BMW M4 Group 4 car, spec to be just a little bit more powerful than your average BTCC touring car. That's the class that you can draw the greatest comparison to in the United Kingdom, for example. You turn up, you give it your best shot in the race and see what you can do. But of course, it's not just about turning up in the case of the guys we're following, because we're following the Alien League and also the Division 1 drivers, the fastest drivers, whereas we also have another lobby, that's Lobby 2, which focuses on the Division 2 drivers. So they're the slightly lower league drivers, whereas here we're looking at the upper league and of course those Alien drivers who are the best of the best and expected to be the ones who will break away from the field. But of course, this is a great opportunity for some of the League 1 drivers to show their credentials and move up into the Alien League for either future instances of this season, so later in the season we may see some drivers potentially get promoted into the Alien League, alternatively in future seasons of the BMW M4 Sunday League. Now, of course, this league is sponsored by FASTR, a community which is all focused entirely on being the best you possibly can be in the motorsport world, whether it be sim racing or out on the real circuit. FASTR is a company and a community which is all about promoting and pushing people into motorsport careers. The link is available in the Twitch description, in the Twitch chat, if you do want to check out the FASTR website. But the company do a lot of work in getting young minds as well as older minds into motorsport careers and getting interest in motorsport growing on a continual basis. And especially over the last decade or so, motorsport has really grown in terms of a sport, in terms of its popularity, and even with the COVID-19 lockdowns we have seen huge events take place online, such as the virtual 24-hour of Le Mans, and FASTR is trying to be at the forefront of that push towards driving more and more people, if you'll excuse the pun, into motorsport and getting more information and more interest throughout. Without further ado then, let's start to retell the story over the last 3 rounds as we set ourselves up for round number 4 tonight, and how things have panned out, and also some of the changes we're expecting over the field tonight. So as we take to trackside then, it's worth first pointing out that we have slightly tweaked the way that the Alien League and Division 1 interact with one another. So for the last couple of races, you will know that we have had the Alien League, we've talked about them, and they've got their own separate mini-league, if you will, and then Division 1 have their league, whereas now we've merged it together because we've noticed that a good number of the Division 1 guys are running at a similar pace to some of the Alien League drivers, and so it wouldn't be fair to essentially perhaps put them in 2 separate leagues. Of course, by the end of the season there will be an overall standing as a result, which shows you how everybody stacks up, but we also denote who finished where in the separate Alien League and Division 1. But we have that overall standing now, which is going to make a critical difference, and it means that our League 1 drivers will not feel as though they're being perhaps segregated from the Alien League drivers, and it puts a bit more pressure on our Alien League drivers, because now when they're earning points, they're not just earning points versus one another, they're also earning points versus the Division 1 guys. So if a Division 1 guy wins a race, he gets the maximum points now, or he or she we should say, rather than the case they get the maximum points within their division, and whoever comes to the top of the Alien League drivers get maximum points within their division as well. So without further ado, as we talked about that change, let's come on to our leading driver at the moment in the championship standings after 3 rounds, and that is Sparks Theory, the British driver currently sat in the pits, standing on 93 points so far, having had a very strong run after the first 3 rounds, and if anything has been the man to beat. Everybody is chasing down Sparks Theory as rapidly as possible, and he has started to build up quite a significant lead at the top of our championship standings, has Sparks, in the fact that on 93 points he is 9 points ahead of anybody else so far, and he really has been the man to beat over the entirety of the season. Albeit some drivers have run him close, but it has been felt that in those instances where Sparks been run close by another driver, he's just had that small edge over the driver behind and just been able to eke out perhaps an extra tenth or two to give him that advantage. He's looked comfortable, and we've been waiting for somebody to really start to mount that pressure on Sparks, and perhaps it will occur tonight. Now in P2 in the championship right now, another one of our Alien League drivers, I like Sparks, is one TNR Philo, who is currently making his way up towards turn number 3 right now. Here is TNR Philo, the British driver, and Philo on 84 points has had a very good season as we come into the second third of the season. We've already passed 1/3 effectively, and it's worth noting that Philo has been the man where Sparks has led the way. It has been Philo who has been chasing after him, and it hasn't always gone Philo's way, it should be pointed out, but for the most part Philo has been the second place man, and he's probably a little bit tired of being that second place man, and is looking to try and move further up the ranks and perhaps just chip off a win from Sparks, as if to make the statement, well Sparks, you have been leading so far, but it's time for the comeback, and this is where it's going to start happening. So that's what we're expecting from Philo. We know he's fast, and we're expecting great things from him, as we always do, and Philo in that second place. Now, when we come on to third place, you're probably thinking, well, surely it's going to be another Alien League driver. Well, no, actually, it is this man right here, Matthew Lambert, the British driver currently sat in the pits, who has been the big shock of this season. Now, Matthew Lambert, coming into this season of the BMW M4 League, was listed as a League 1 driver. In fact, he was hyped up to be perhaps the most promising of the League 1 drivers by some, from what we heard down at the paddock, and he has shown it in the fact that after 3 rounds on 67 points, he has pulled a significant gap over his League 1 competition and finds himself in the pursuit of Alien League driver spots. And indeed, last time out at the Nürburgring GP circuit, we saw he was really taking to task our Alien League drivers, particularly Philo, and also in an early instance Sparks as well, albeit Sparks seemed to pull away after initial pressure from Matthew Lambert. So we're expecting more from the British driver tonight, and we're wondering whether he can continue this momentum and really break away from his peers. You've then got a gap of 12 points to GTP's Rick, WRX, who, as we look around the circuit, we try to find Rick as always, and I don't think Rick has quite arrived yet, so he's not here at the circuit right now, but once he has arrived, we'll be sure to let you know, and we'll also look to find him out on track for you, so you can look out for the car that we're going to be following. But Rick with 55 points at the moment, and another one of our Alien League drivers, and really started to build some momentum is GTP's Rick, WRX, in the fact things haven't quite gone his way in the opening rounds, but at the Nürburgring GP circuit he found some form, and he's looking to carry that into tonight. In 5th place, and unfortunately a driver we won't be seeing for the rest of this season, is NXTGEN's Neutro Storm. The Dutchman unfortunately having to retire after round 3 due to a clash in personal circumstances. He's got some personal items which need to be taken care of as a priority, which is completely understandable, and what this being a Sunday league, it can be the case that drivers do come and go and spaces open up and close and other drivers may fill in. And whilst we haven't filled in that space tonight, we could expect that perhaps Neutron Storm may come back in a future instance, or alternatively a new driver will appear on the field. Perhaps somebody may get promoted from Division 2, or we'll see a new driver entirely, but we will wait and see. But unfortunately we're not going to be seeing too much more of Neutro Storm for the time being, and he's sat on 53 points at the moment in 5th place, but albeit we expect our drivers to start to pass him as the season continues tonight. We've then got a hop 3 points down to MMR's Luke Mitchell, who again, not currently at the circuit, but one of our other Alien League drivers, whereas Neutro Storm was a League 1 driver. Luke Mitchell on 50 points at the moment, having missed a couple of races, and it's been a little bit of a difficult season for Luke so far, in the fact things haven't quite got his way when he has been available to race, and he's been trying to just simply find a little bit of momentum. And well, last time on Nürburgring GP circuit, found himself really fighting in that midfield and not feeling too comfortable at the circuit compared to his Alien League peers, but having good scraps nonetheless, and he'll be looking to continue tonight to get some more points on the board and chase down Rick, his Alien League opponent. He is joint 6th, albeit on count back it is 6th for him, and in 7th place right now is this man right here, Martin JL09, the British driver, making his way around through the first chicane right now. And Martin has been a very strong driver over the course of the season, albeit things haven't quite gone his way by comparison with Matthew Lambert. But it should be pointed out that when we compare Matthew Lambert to other drivers in Division 1, Martin here has been the driver who has been able to bring the challenge closest on some occasions to Matthew Lambert, Neutron Storm being the other one, but of course Neutro's not here. So Martin is going to have to continue that charge now within Division 1 and really do his best to chase down the leader of League 1. As we can see that with Martin being almost 50 points tonight, we would expect that he can go for a huge points haul after a very difficult evening at Nürburgring GP circuit last time out, particularly in race number 2 where things did not go to plan at all, as they don't go to plan at all there. As he comes out the first Lesbo, he goes on the AstroTurf and spins into the inside wall and recovers the car. And he resets to the pits, in fact. Then you've got to hop a further 4 points down before you get to NXTGEN's reset to track in P8 in the championship standings. I'm also sorry to announce that unfortunately Reset to Track will not be participating any further in Season 20, again due to personal circumstances, since we had a couple of drivers experience some personal circumstances which they need to attend to, but we do look forward to potentially welcoming Reset to Track back at a later date. Alternatively, we may find that he comes back in a later season, who knows, or a new driver may step up in his stead. But Reset to Track on 46 points right now in that P8 in the championship, and we expect he will drop down the order as time progresses. It's then Sir Bertus, the Dutch driver here, who is currently in P9 in our Drivers' Championship, the League 1 driver, much like Reset to Track, who would have been his countryman and peer. Sir Bertus, having had a mixed set of results, particularly last time out in the Nürburgring GP circuit where things did not go to plan at all, and he found himself involved in a number of incidents which were not necessarily his fault, but he found himself at the heart of some incidents where his car got caught up in the mix and also in the accidents that were involved. And on 40 points right now, we'll be looking for a resurgence of form tonight at the Monza circuit. What of the fact, I do not think that the results at Nürburgring GP circuit were indicative of what he can do, and we'll be looking forward to seeing what he's able to achieve tonight. And he is joint P9, but on count back, he is on P9 versus Luke Doherty, who is not currently at the circuit as far as I'm aware. So Luke is our final Alien League driver, as I understand it, who we are still waiting for Luke to potentially show tonight. But Luke on 40 points as well, the British driver, as we hear that Luke Mitchell has arrived at the paddock and will be out on circuit soon. And we expect Luke may be doing the same in the very near future. For some of our drivers still yet to come, but Luke on 40 points as well. But on count back, our lowest placed Alien League drivers it currently stands got a lot to achieve and make up time for over the course of the rest of this season. It's then to P11 that we find a Duskiver, who's currently sat in the pits here with the very notable red, white and blue BMW M4, the British driver embodying the British flag colours, of course, on 31 points, and really, much like the rest of the drivers who we're now going to be talking about, found himself towards the lower end of things, albeit not necessarily because of his pace, but perhaps because of being involved in incidents over the first 3 rounds. And Duskiver on 31 points will be looking to push back tonight and try to get himself into the midfield places to get some solid points on the board. He is then being closely pursued in P12 by Edge HJG, the British driver here making his way around the circuit right now, as we see Luke Mitchell having to leave the room probably to get a quick reset in place. But Edge, having not attended the opening round, as we recall, found himself down on points but hitting his stride, albeit not for too long, with only a single race at Brands Hatch, and then the Nürburgring GP races not yielding him the best of results. Again, Edge finding himself in amongst a number of incidents at the Nürburgring GP circuit, and the British driver will be good to go again today on those 30 points. And then, well, joint on 30 points, albeit on count back 1 place down, is Dcast, who, as we look around, we can see that Dcast, the British driver here with the monster livery, the white and green and black livery BMW M4, currently parked in the pits, the Brit on those 30 points as well. And much like Edge, finding himself a little bit down the field in terms of pace, but also in amongst a huge number of incidents in the opening couple of rounds, and really just hoping for a cleaner experience tonight and one where he can get some solid points on the board. We then hop down to P14 in our standings to Gino Derma, who is our race host tonight and therefore our trackside steward to ensure everything proceeds as planned. And Gino, the British driver here, having had a very difficult opening 3 race rounds, in the fact that a race round 1 and a race round 2 did not quite go according to plan. And then round number 3 he had to miss entirely. He wasn't able to attend the races, so as a result no points on the board, and Gino will now need to get some solid points tonight in order to start making his way up the Drivers' Championship. The League 1 driver, of course, here, having shown great promise in the opening practice, and will be looking to deploy that. And last but not least in our Drivers' Championship standings is the driver known as D10 Piper, racing in the Welsh police car themed liveried BMW M4. The Brit on 10 points right now, and was absent for a good number of races in the opening third of the season. If we recall correctly, I believe it's the opening round in particular where he missed out, and he has not had the best of results, finding himself right down the bottom of the field. And really the driver here with nothing to lose, and we expect that tonight as he goes into the races, looking to have fun, but at the same time try and get some solid results on the board. As you can see, the pit crew there just keeping their eyes on the car and waiting for D10 Piper to give the command to change the tyres over once again. So those are our drivers, of course, who we've introduced, and we will just quickly flick you over to MMR's Luke Mitchell as he's just arrived in the paddock and got the car out of the pit. And we can see here, just waited to get going, out of the pit garage I should add, and Luke Mitchell with the white and black livery BMW M4 there, and our Alien League driver here sitting on those 50 points in P6 in the Drivers' Championship. So we've still got 5 minutes to go before we get underway with any racing. And whilst we're waiting to get underway, probably the big question, of course, will be, well, what does Monza bring to the table today? What can we expect at the Italian circuit, a legendary circuit with a good number of racing series, whether it be Formula 1, GT3 or others? Well, what we're going to do very shortly, we're going to follow Matthew Lambert around, and then we'll have him give us a guided lap, and we'll take you around the circuit for what should be a fast lap. We've got some very high average speeds here, and we've also got some fast flying apexes, particularly the 2 chicanes. Well, not the 2 chicanes, they're the slowest corners on the circuit, I should point out, but particularly the 2 Lesmos and also the 3rd chicane. But we'll cover those in due course. So as we ride on board then, we're riding on the bumper of Matthew Lambert. He's just going to come up to the final corner, and then we're going to be beginning a lap. And the final corner, Curva Parabolica, is so essential with regards to getting a good exit, and therefore a good run down the straight into turn 1, that it is seen as the corner that makes or breaks your subsequent qualifying lap. But I hope that Matthew Lambert's not going into the pits. I'll be very grateful as he pulls all the way to the right, so he's going for a qualifying line here, and well, hopefully he stays out on circuit to do one more lap for us as he makes his way down towards turn 1, then having crossed the timelines in 7th gear, top gear for the BMW M4, braking at about the 150 board, I suspect, or 125 metres there, stamping on those brakes and coming into the 1st chicane, known as the first Ferrante. And as he makes his way out of the chicane turns 1 and 2, or the Retfilo chicane, we go through Curva Grande, which is turn 3, this right-hander, just flat out, but you've got to be careful here not to overextend the steering. You don't want to pull too hard on the steering wheel, because otherwise you're going to be pulling too tight to the apex, and you don't want to be too slack on the steering wheel either, otherwise you'll understeer wide. Coming up to the 2nd chicane now, braking at the 125 metre mark there, or the escape road, and we can see coming down to 3rd gear and skidding it into the chicane and getting a bump over the chicane, and I think this is going to be an aborted lap by Matthew Lambert, so we are going to have to try and find somebody else to ride on board with. That's a little bit unfortunate there. So we're going to stay with Martin Giallo 9. And fingers crossed Martin can give us what we solely desire, which is a lap of the circuit here. So we're riding on board with Martin, and you're going to see a very similar approach, albeit he's on the standard racing line now down towards turn 1. You stay over on the left hand side because you want to widen the turn in apex for turn number 1, of course. So coming into turn 1, braking at about 130 metres there, all considered, and coming down to 1st gear, getting a very nice tight cut on the 1st chicane apex. And as we come through up towards Curva Grande here, similar sequence, getting a very nice launch off of the 1st chicane, the Retfilo chicane, it should be pointed out, and now through Curva Grande he goes, up towards Del Roggio chicane, and you're going to see turns 4 and 5 will come out, and hopefully he'll nail it, whereas Matthew was not able to because he launched it a little bit over the turn 4 apex curb. He's going to be braking at the escape road, in fact a little bit deeper there, and I think this is going to go a bit deep, a bit too much momentum, and well, that is an unfortunate cut, but you can imagine there he will be picking up a time penalty for the cut. Why, I suppose he will, as he waves to us. I think he feels a little bit of camera pressure there, a little bit camera shy, as he now goes through the first of the 2 Lesmos here, and he gets it out on the AstroTurf there on the exit curb before the 2nd Lesmo of turn number 7, and he goes a bit wide there again, and this is unfortunate from Martin, and I think he's going to be just braking the car here, as in slowing it down and then rejoining very gradually, as we hear that Luke Doherty 94 has arrived at the circuit. But as Martin continues on his way now down towards turn number 8, 9 and 10. So he's coming up to the Ascari chicane here. So a very fast chicane. He's going to be coming through the corners, all said and done, into 4th gear, and then through turn 9 you're going to be planted on the throttle before lifting to throw the car to the left for turn 10. And now accelerating out all the way down towards Curva Parabolica, and that will be the completion of that once he comes through Curva Parabolica. Of course, a very difficult corner, this final corner, because it starts off quite tight to open up. It's one of those corners where you want to get the initial entry as best as possible, because you want to be on that throttle as soon as possible when you exit. But of course, when you get on that throttle, you experience understeer. But no such thing here for Martin as he makes his way out the corner. And whilst it wasn't the cleanest lap, hopefully that gives you a feel for what a lap around Monza will be like, albeit perhaps with a few little less offs. But it's worth noting as well, we do have a slight change to the evening tonight, in the fact that once qualifying is complete, we will be immediately coming out of the race, and instead we are going to be manually setting the grid with our alien drivers starting up towards the front after qualifying, and our League One drivers starting behind. This has been a change of rules due to a little bit of confusion with regards to the standings, but we are going to wait and find out what is going to happen very shortly. It's a slight change, and the reason for that rule change, it should be pointed out, is because we found in the first 3 rounds that when we had qualifying with all the field intermixed against one another, it ended up in a scenario whereby effectively we saw some drivers potentially going for moves which were unwarranted, because we may have had League One drivers trying to go for moves on Alien League drivers, not necessarily out of desperation in their mind, but it was felt it might have been sort of desperation moves because they wanted to get one over on on Alien League drivers and such forth. So that was a concern, and that's why we're proceeding to address it via this manner. So it means proceedings will be a little bit slower tonight by comparison with their normal, but nonetheless we will be getting that racing action to you, and it will be still the standard 2 race setup. Although we can see that we are getting a little bit of clarification with respect to the rule right now, whether it's just race 1 or race number 2. We're just going to find out for you folks, because it's the first time I think a lot of drivers may not have read the rule sheet, or alternatively our race host might just be a little bit confused there, but we're not going to interfere. We're just going to wait and find out. But in the meantime, let's introduce Luke very quickly, our Alien League driver here, who is at the bottom of our Alien League group standings at the moment, having missed one of the rounds, and he'll be looking to build up as many points as quickly as possible as he makes his way down towards turn 1, denoted by the black base livery with a combination of a yellow, a blue and a red all over the car there, and also a bit of white, of course, with the FASTR logo. And Luke will be trying to make a resurgence in terms of points as quickly as possible. But we're going to be bringing qualifying in very shortly, folks, probably within the next 2 to 3 minutes once the rule has been clarified. It'll be a 10-minute qualifying session where all of our drivers are expected to just go and put in the best possible lap. No fuel in the cars, well, minimum fuel in the cars we should say, because otherwise the cars wouldn't be going around the circuit. And after the 10 minutes, whoever's the fastest driver starts right up the front. We're then going to have race number 1, which is a 10-minute race. So based on the lap time here being just over 2 minutes, we suspect there will be the best part of 5 laps. And then we get reverse grid in race number 2. But we have had that clarification there. It will be in both races that we will have the manually set qualifying grid, where our Alien League drivers will be starting up front, albeit in race number 2. If you're wondering, well, how on earth that's going to work out, because of the fact that we have the Alien League and also League One, we'll be doing reverse grids of each respective group, with the Alien League drivers starting at the front of the pack. So that's how it makes out. As we say hello to Zeronic and Lord Hush in the chat. And yep, I do like that, Lord Hush. The no fuel in cars moment in qualifying is the part of the league where the drivers get out and push the cars. As well, I believe that happened to Nigel Mansell in Formula 1 when he ran out of fuel, so he actually pushed the car across the finish line, and he came home, and I think it was meant to be 3rd place because he was going to be on the podium, but he came home in 6th or 7th place through pushing the car across the line. But here we go then, ladies and gentlemen. Qualifying is underway, and who is going to be on top at the end of the 10 minutes? Well, if we were to base it on form so far and the pre-practice, it would be Sparks. But then again, perhaps there could be some surprises. And of course, the key thing to keep in mind here is that slipstream around Monza is absolutely vital to a strong qualifying lap. Some of you who are Formula 1 fans will recall the slipstream fiascos that we have seen in the past in Formula 1 with regards to drivers essentially all queuing up to go across that timing line in the slipstream of multiple other cars, and how as a result of that, drivers have not necessarily set for qualifying laps. Well, here I think we're going to have all of our drivers try and chase one another around the circuit to try and get get into the toe of another driver. Of course, you don't want to be that driver up front who's by themselves and hasn't got a slipstream, because in doing so you end up in that awkward position whereby you're giving a tow to the guys behind, but you're not benefiting from one yourself. Now, if we talk about, for example, Sparks Theory, who we find is right up the front of the pack, as we see, he makes his way through the first Lesmo and into the second Lesmo, so turn 7 here. What do you do in Sparks' case? Do you try to essentially back off a little bit and let somebody get in front of you? Or do you try and pull away from the pack and make sure nobody's benefiting from the tow? Now, if I was in Sparks' shoes, albeit Sparks is a much more experienced driver than myself, I would say what he's looking to do right now is break away from the field and essentially go round by himself, so no tow, and just set a qualifying lap as a banker lap, i.e. the best possible lap he can get without a tow. So perhaps 1 or 2 laps in that fashion, and then he may try to benefit from a tow later on. Whereas if we look back to, say, Matthew Lambert, for example, we can see he's just a little bit behind Philo right now, and Edge is just behind him. And in fact, if we look at Luke Doherty, you can see that the gap between Luke and Edge means that Luke will be getting that distant tow off the back of Edge's car, and that will benefit him on the straights. But of course, the downside to this is when they come into the braking zones, if Edge isn't as fast through those corners, particularly the chicanes, then Luke will find himself behind another driver and it will be stuck. But as we head around to begin the first flying lap, then it will be Sparks who'll be right on board with, who's our lead driver in terms of the fast laps. We're typically riding with Sparks here, but we will bring you some other drivers' perspective, and let's see what Sparks is able to get up to in clear air on a qualifying lap. So braking into the first chicane, braking at 125 metres, down to second gear and cutting across the apex curve for turn 1 before getting it quite planted, albeit a little bit of snap oversteer coming out to turn 2, completing the first chicane. The Retfidio completed very nicely there by Sparks, and as he makes his way through Curva Grande now, you're going to see he's just going to let the car gradually come through the corner here. You're not going to hear too much wheel screech as he makes his way now up to the second chicane, staying over to the right and braking at the escape road, and now coming down to what is third gear and cutting across the turn 4 apex there and getting a nice run over the sausage curve of turn 5, lifting the right hand side wheels up but keeping that steering straight to avoid spinning the car. And now into the first Lesmo, a little bit deep, but you can see he's gone deep intentionally to get the rear end of the car to slide the car around. And now into the second Lesmo here, coming down to fourth gear and riding on that apex curve before planting it on the throttle. The gearing from third to fifth in the BMW M4 being very short, and as a result you can afford to be in those higher gears in order to get solid acceleration without excess gear changes. And as he makes his way down towards the Ascari chicane right now, we're going to see a very quick flick through the chicane here. So he's going to go into left-hander at turn 8, into fourth gear, flick it up onto the apex curve before turning the steering wheel back to the right. You can see he's fully committed on the throttle at turn 9, flicks it back to our left through turn 10, and now just proceeds down towards the Parabolica corner, the final corner, Curva Parabolica, to complete the lap. And this is where it's going to be make or break for his opening lap. How will he do this? Well, he's going to break at about the 100-metre board here, if not a little bit deeper. In fact, he's gone at about 80 metres and goes down to fourth gear, goes for a later apex, that way he can get on the throttle nice and early, and he's going to stay over to the right here to shorten his run to the start finish line. He's very happy with this lap, is Sparks, and as he makes his way across the line, cutting as far to the right as possible, it is going to be a 55.5, a very fast opening lap. And in fact, we see that the guys around him right now, as Matthew Lambert in fact sets a 55.9, so Matthew Lambert again taking Iranian league drivers to task, as we see that Martin goes up to provisional P4 with a 156.8 and Mitchell getting in there with what is a 156.4. So a lot of drivers already chopping and changing as we see Sparks resets to the pits right now. You can afford to do that, of course. What there being no fuel in these cars as modelled. Going for that fresh set of tyres immediately. And now the big question opens up as we look further down the field. Skyver in P5 with 57.4, and then Luke Doherty in P7. Luke having a difficult opening lap, and I think he might have experienced a bit of difficulty being behind Edge with that 58.2. Albeit Edge right now, as we look down the order, we can see that Edge, HJG, is with a 2-minute.6. So Edge not having the best opening lap right now. As we follow Edge around, you can see that he's in the dirty air of Martin ahead of him, and he'll be using this to benefit on the straight. But of course he'll experience some understeer into the corners, such as the first Lesmo here, albeit he brings it down to third gear. He needs to use a lower gear compared to what we saw with Sparks in order to keep that front end tucked into the corner, because otherwise it will understeer off in fourth gear. And as he comes out, he's now going to have the long run down to the Ascari chicane here, and I think he's just about getting that distant tow off of Martin's car, and we should see as he comes down the hill here, he's going to be setting a faster sector time for himself through sector 2. And as he comes up, what's the time going to be? It's an improvement by 1.6 12.7 seconds. And if you needed evidence there, folks, of how much that slipstream makes a change, I think Edge might have let Luke through at that point in the lap on his previous one, but that is a huge gain as we see Luke there getting it wrong and having to burn a penalty in the run down towards the Parabolica corner. And Edge right now having to go past Luke, albeit getting a little bit compromised, but not too much. Luke getting out of the way there. And Edge now making his way into Parabolica. Can he nail this lap and move himself from provisional at P11? I think this is definitely going to be into 1 minute. So as Matthew Lambert improves and sets provisional pole with a 55.5. So we are seeing a changing of the guard potentially, as we see that Edge does not move over to the right hand side and actually takes the race in line, which extends his run to the finish line. But it's a 57.2 right now for Edge, provisional P8. A good improvement from Edge, although he has lost that distant tower for Martin by looks of things. And now Luke Doherty behind him finds himself behind the League One driver once again and will be thinking to himself, oh goodness me, I hope Edge goes a little bit faster this time and I can improve as a result of it. But still, as we've seen, Matthew Lambert has taken that provisional pole by 300ths, but we've still got the best part of 3 minutes to go as Philo gets it very wrong coming out of the first chicane. There were a little bit of gravel, but I think this is the opening flying lap from Philo, so he is going full. Well, it's not the opening flying lap, I should say, because Philo right now is on what is a 1:56.3, so he's 8.5 tenths down on Matthew Lambert, but Philo on his outlaps, he's going to have one more lap to go, and we could be seeing a 6-lap race here, folks, given the fact that our lap times are actually in the 1:55s. They're not in excess of 2 minutes, but we'll come back to that in the race, of course. Looking further down the field right now, as we see Philo picking up a penalty there. We can see Gino right now in P12 out of our drivers, so we are missing 3 drivers tonight, of course. But as Gino makes his way down, well, sorry, 2 drivers tonight, I should point out, but as Gino makes his way down towards the chicane here, and we can see the second chicane nails it very nicely, and he does need to find a lap, does Gino, because right now that 2 minute 12.7 is not indicative of his pace at all, and he has got a lot to do before the end of this qualifying session as we ride on board the front bumper of Gino, and he makes his way up to the second Lesmo. And can he nail it over the apex here? A little bit early on the apex there, and you'll notice as a result the car bounced off the apex curve and went out onto the AstroTurf, and I think as a result of that, Gino's just realised to himself, okay, for the final lap I do tonight, I just need to go a little bit later into the braking zone before I do that, otherwise I'm going to be sending the car off to Narnia in the gravel. I'm going to be playing sandcastles at dawn. As he makes his way into Ascari, bit deep on the brakes there, and the car understeered as he tried to turn it in, but he does recover it well, but he's lost probably the best part of 1.5 tenths by making that correction, and it means he's not in the distant tow of any drivers ahead of him, such as Luke Mitchell right now, but I think Gino will be grateful for just doing a lap in some clear air and getting himself a good lap on the board, and it's going to be in the 1 minute, this one. We could see that he was up by the best part of 18 seconds at the end of Sector 2 on his previous time, so we're definitely expecting something from Gino, but I think he's going to stay over to the right to get a time on the board. It will compromise his run up to the first chicane by a small margin, but he stays over to the right here, and it is a 1:57.4, moving him a provisional P9, and we will see if he improves, as it is very tight in our top 10 right now. And Lambert and Sparks are still trading places as Luke Mitchell now finds himself in provisional P3 with 56.2, and he has got the slipstream of D10 Piper, who it should be pointed out, D10 on a 56.4, so he's on a very similar lap to Luke Mitchell, and this could really work in Luke's favour as Luke Doherty gets out of the way of both drivers as they make their way through. It's almost as if D10 Piper is the lead police car here, and he is escorting Luke Mitchell around the circuit. He's almost as if he's a pace car clearing the traffic out the way, and this is really good for Luke. I think this is going to work out very nicely for him, so long as he doesn't get it wrong under braking anywhere and tap the rear of Piper's car, and Piper doesn't recognise the fact that Luke's getting too close, although you could see coming out of the second chicane, Piper having a difficulty in getting the throttle down as they make their way through the Lesmos, and D10 goes wide, which means that Luke has lost his pace car, but I think D10 will not be too dismantled about that, as a 56.4, and the fact that Luke was moving a little bit faster and setting better times, as Lambert is on a personal best after Sector 1 right now, and we see that Sparks has returned to the pit, so Sparks will not be on pole for the opening race, and that is going to be, we will have a change of pole position driver today. Will it be Lambert or will it be somebody else? We're going to wait and find out. We've only got a couple more seconds to go as Martin comes across the line here, and he misses out. It was his final lap. He just missed out on getting onto one more lap, I think, or I'm not 100% sure as Edge completes his qualifying session. We're going to hop back to Luke Mitchell right now as all our drivers are coming around, and Luke right now in that provisional P3. Because of the tow he picked up earlier, will this be a faster lap, or will it be a case that he's going to have to settle for P3? As we see Decast sets a 57.9. He does improve, but it's not enough to get him into the top 8. In fact, I think that places him somewhere in the region of about P10. And as Luke Mitchell comes across the line here, Sir Bertus moving up to 57.7. Luke does not improve, and Bertus will be P10 as a result of that. As we look further around the field, I don't think we've got many more drivers on laps right now. As Luke Doherty comes out the final corner, this will not be an improvement because we saw him off earlier on. I think he's just deciding to get the car across the line. That is qualifying complete, and Matthew Lambert improves to 55.4, so it will be Matthew Lambert on pole position by the distance of 1/10 of a second. Well, we have got a League One driver who is going to be leading our field around the circuit. Well, he's starting on the front row and at the head of the pack down into turn 1. But of course, it's Monza turn 1, ladies and gentlemen, and for those who've guessed it, yep, it's one of the heaviest braking zones you can see on a race calendar, and that means we have the potential for some interesting chops and changes into the first chicane. It's not a nice place to be, particularly when you're the lead guy without the slipstream of other cars around you. But with that, that is qualifying, and what a result for this man right here. The British driver really starting to come into form, and Luke Mitchell as well, not far off our lead guys, and really being the lead driver of the rest of the field with that 56.2, 1.5 tenths clear of Philo. But our two alien drivers will be starting off row number 2. Row number 3 going to Martin, the other contender for the top spot in League One, alongside Luke Mitchell, albeit Martin will be on the 3rd row with D10 Piper beside it, and it's good to see Piper getting up onto that 3rd row. He's had a difficult set of qualifying sessions over the first 3 rounds, but he's started to move up, as is Duskiver and Edge. Both of those drivers normally a bit further down the pack, but up onto that 4th row today. And then Gino in P9, what can he do? We'll have to wait and see. And Sir Bertus, not in the best of qualifying sessions, but a lovely livery on that BMW, I must say. That's brownie points right there for the Walk and Horse livery, as we are going to get underway with race number 1. So as we pan down to the grid then, Matthew Lambert on your right, Sparks Ferrer on your left, behind them Luke Mitchell and Philo. But watch out for D10 Piper in P6. What can he do from that far back? And Luke Doherty as well, starting in P12. And it's lights out and away we go, and Lambert and Sparks getting very similar starts to one another, but I think one driver did stall a little bit further back as they all make their way in the drag race down towards turn 1. And of course everybody behind our leaders will gain a massive amount as Lambert immediately pulls to the left hand side to the inside into turn 1, and Sparks has to look for a way round, and D10 Piper very late on the brakes there, and Sparks has been spun as a result of it. And I think Piper was at the heart of that major incident, as we can see that Martin in P4 getting it all sorts of wrong out the chicane. And now Sparks is going to be furious with that, of course, because it's cost him so much ground, and Piper backing off immediately, I think, to give the place back, and he has apologised for it, although I don't think he's backed off that much, as we see all our drivers make their way up towards the second chicane now, and Mitchell, of course, gaining, and Philo gaining, whereas Sparks, our championship leader, has lost out. But this top 3 have broken away already, as Edge gets all sorts of sideways through the second chicane, and we have had a lobby crash. Not sure what's happened there, but we have had the lobby completely come down. I'm not sure what's going on, folks. I'm just waiting for confirmation. I'll let you know as soon as we hear anything. But that was a phenomenal start from Lambert to defend so early on, and Sparks really losing out. But of course, we're now going to have to, well, we'll definitely be going again at this rate, as I'm just waiting to find out for you folks what is happening with regards to lobby. My apologies, folks. We now have a clarification of what has happened here. So, it was with regards to the race that rather than just get everybody to leave the race, we had the whole situation, and we completely forgot about it, of course, because our enthusiasm got us carried away with regards to the racing. But remember what we said earlier about that change of rule, in that the Alien League drivers start up front for the races and the League One guys behind. Well, our race host has decided to crash the lobby, so that way we can create that situation, or we can set the grid manually. So that's why things went pear-shaped there, in terms of it was an intentional lobby crash, but everyone's just had that filled in for them. And we should be back underway with the racing within what I suspect will be the next 3 to 4 minutes. So don't go anywhere, we're almost there. So we are going to be seeing our drivers get themselves back out onto the circuit, and then we will have the grid set, of course, and then we will be underway. So what it will mean is that effectively Matthew Lambert will be starting at the head of the League One guys, but he won't be starting right at the front of the field, which I think, personally for me, if I'm to give my opinion briefly, as we see that D10 Piper is making his way around the circuit backwards, sorry, in reverse. What I should clarify is that, personally, from my perspective, I feel that Matthew Lambert should be given that opportunity to see if he can beat the Alien League drivers by starting on pole. But the flip side of the coin is, of course, that he will have the opportunity to chase after now, because he will be starting behind them, and he will feel, I think, in his heart that he's got that confidence or that ability to take the fight to all of them, because he's shown in qualifying he had the pace. So it has its ups, it has its downs in terms of pros and cons. And we're just waiting to get underway once again. At least it's not actual technical issues this time, as we see Sparks there just teasing Matthew Lambert by saying you're in the wrong division. I think he's trying to say to him, you should be up in the Alien Leagues with us. A little bit cheeky there, of course, but it's good to hear. I think that's the ultimate compliment being paid to Lambert, in the fact that if you're being told by the Alien League drivers you should be in the Alien League division with us, then they feel that you're a threat. So we should be getting underway again with some racing within the next 5 minutes, as I say, ladies and gentlemen. Probably sooner, because we do have everybody in the lobby right now, and everybody is readied up and ready to go. But whilst we're waiting, of course, we're just going to look around the field as all our drivers are getting that final little bit of practice in. And the Sky over there with that very lovely livery, of course, making his way around down the run towards turns 8, 9 and 10. Doing a little bit of side to side as we see Luke Mitchell just patiently going backwards around the circuit. And you can definitely tell he is chomping at the bit to get racing right now. So much so he wants to do Monza in reverse and forward. Not at the same time, of course, because the car can't do both at the same time. as the Skyver makes his way through Curva Parabolica. And whilst we are waiting for the grid order to be set here, you can see Piper running around in the police car up towards turn 1 once again. Okay, and by the sounds of things, we are going to be good to go within probably the next minute. The grid has been set for race number 1, so it'll be a go, go, go within the next minute. So everybody just needs to make sure they've readied up, which they have, and then it will be a race number 1 coming right at you. So you can see Edge here just doing some donuts on the runoff area at the second chicane, just to pass the time, and of course running those BMW M-Power livery colours. Lovely set of colours there. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, race 1 for the second time of asking. Here it comes, and this is the official race 1 for tonight of round number 4. It is go, go, go. So as we pan down to the grid, it will be Sparks on the front row, alongside him Luke Mitchell, behind Philo, Doherty, and then Lambert starting in P4, and looking back from Martin, D10 Piper, and Describer here, as we do not have Rick at the circuit tonight, of course. And it's the lights out and away we go, and we can see already that some of our drivers further down the order struggling to get off the line. D10 Piper in particular, that police car bogging down a little bit as they all charge down towards turn 1, and you can see already Matthew Lambert on a charge up to P4. He's already cleared Luke Doherty as they make their way to the first braking zone. A little bit of contact between Mitchell and Sparks Fury, and it all concertinas together, and Mitchell is reset as he goes off at turn 1. And I think that was very unfortunate there for Luke, in the fact he just grazed the back of Sparks' car, and he got the reset as a result, because Matthew didn't have anywhere to go. He did try to take that evasive action. We will take a look back in a short while. So Luke all the way down the order out of turn 1, and now as we make our way up towards turn number 3 and 4, 5, as we come to that second chicane, we'll see that Philo is a little bit down Sparks as they all concertina into the second chicane, and Describer having to go very heavy defensive right now versus D10 Piper. And as we can see, Luke Mitchell already on a charge, made his way back up into P9, and this man right here will not be in a happy mood right now as he makes a move on Sir Bertus at the first of Lesmo. He is on a charge, and nobody's holding him out as we ride on board with the British driver here. You can see that he's got Sir Bertus in his left-hand rear-view mirror, and he's now chasing down D10 Piper, but already Luke on a charge, only 5.4 seconds down the leaders right now, and I think he feels he can definitely get that result back as he makes his way up towards the Ascari chicane. Now up front we can see that Sparks still leading ahead of Philo. Philo with the 1 second penalty for track limits earlier on in the lap, and he will have to burn that. And Lambert in the same situation, although Lambert and Martin, well, everybody seems to be picking up penalties early on, and in fact we can see Luke Doherty getting a half-second penalty for track limits, but in a free-wide battle down into the Curva Grande, into Parabolica, we can see the Describer in the middle with D10 Piper on the outside and Luke Mitchell on the inside, and Luke going for the double move late on the brakes here, and he gets it. I think Luke has done it. He's gone very deep though, and he's out onto the runoff area, but he's just kept it on the racing line, but they're still free wide as they can't stand time in lines right now, and it is Sparks Fury up ahead of TNR Philo, followed by Matthew Lambert, then Martin, then Luke Doherty, then D10 Piper, who emerges ahead of Describer and Luke Mitchell as they battle down into turn 1. It's going back on the brakes. Luke Doherty being dragged into this. It's now 4 wide as they come down into the braking zone, and we can see that Luke Mitchell has spun off the circuit. He caught the grass and he has been reset, and Luke, having made all that ground on the opening lap after a disastrous opening lap, he's got to do it all again. And you've got to feel for the driver. That must absolutely hurt. And he's got so much more work to do now, and he didn't want any of that. And he was a man on a mission. But talking about men on a mission, we can see that D10 Piper on the inside of Luke Doherty into the second chicane. As they make their way into it, you can see that Piper is being blocked off, and Luke Doherty holding that inside line, and whoa, Gio Derma into the wall on the exit of the second chicane, just clipping the apex curve of turn 4. Too much of those left-hand wheels and spin off, but we stay with our battle for P5 right now, as Sir Bertus and Describer try to find their way into the mix, and Edge isn't too far behind. And well, if you take it from Sir Bertus's view, we can see that as he chases after the pack of 3 BMWs ahead of him, everybody driving the same machinery, of course, but in the case of Sir Bertus, he's probably thinking, right, now how do I get past these 3 to get to where I want to be up there? Well, he's going to have to be the man who answers that for himself, as he looks for a move on the inside into Ascari on Describer, and he's not close enough. I think that was more of a feint than anything to try and get Describer's mind, but the British driver is unfazed as they make their way down towards Parabolica for the second time of asking. As they make their way all charging down towards the Parabolica, what we can see is that up front Sparks is not getting away from Philo, but we'd perhaps expect that, albeit Philo does have 4 tenths of a second to burn in terms of a penalty, as they both make their way across the timing lines to start lap number 3, and it is Matthew Lambert who has fallen away from our race leaders, and in fact he has pulled away from Martin, it should be noted. So the 2 League 1 drivers, the creme of la creme of League 1 as it currently stands, are in a little world to their own in P3 and P4, and Luke Doherty in P5 right now. He has got a huge battle in his hands, and he's side by side with D10. He flashes to let D10 through on his left hand side, or at least down on his left hand side, but he goes defensive into the opening chicane, and we can see that he's still holding, but he is creating the mother of all traffic jams, as Luke Mitchell and Edge, both in P10 and P9 respectively, are closing in on this 4-way battle for P5, and it is going to open up to a 6-way battle for the final spot of our top 5 as they make their way for Curva Grande once again. And as they all come up towards the second chicane right now, we can see that Luke just has the better run initially out of the first chicane, but it's the slipstream that gives the guys behind such the ability to catch up, as Luke goes sideways through that second chicane. I think he's more of a drifter here than a touring car driver as he makes his way up to the Lesmo. We can see that D10 looks to the inside, and Luke has to react, and behind Describer and Sir Bertus side by side through the first Lesmo, and as they make their way down, Describer rejoins Sir Bertus on the inside, and Sir Bertus defends into the second Lesmo and gains the position. Well, what a move by Sir Bertus, the Dutchman on the mission to charge up to P5, and he started the work. As we look back, and in fact, as we can see, he goes up the inside here into the Slesmo, and it's not normally a place you'd overtake, but Describer gives him the space and he proceeds to go for it. There's a little bit of contact, but Describer's allowed to rejoin. Bertus gives him the space and then tries to pull to defend as much as possible, and Describer has to concede the position. What a great move, although we can see that Bertus has picked up a couple of seconds penalty for track limits at the Ascari chicane for his efforts. As behind, we can see that Describer now going defensive versus Edge, although Edge is going to have his inside into Curva Parabolica, and as they make their way through the corner here, Edge actually calls in Describer to have to take a wide line here as they come out of the corner, and we can see that Mitchell has gained as well, so a 2-for-1 special versus Describer, and Luke Mitchell up into P9 chasing after Edge right now as they go onto lap number 4, and meanwhile up front Philo still being held off by Sparks, but I don't think it's going to be long before they start battling, as in the battle for P5 it continues with D10 Piper on the inside of Luke Doherty into the opening chicane. Luke going deeper on the brakes, but then having to stamp on the brakes really hard for the second part of the opening chicane, but Rhett Philo covered. Now he's up towards Curva Grande once again, and D10 has got to find a way through. Luke is just so confident on his brakes by comparison with the League 1 driver right now. I think that's what the difference between the two of them is. If D10 can get ahead, it's then a question of Luke beating him on the brakes into the corners. But we look behind it, we can see that Sir Bertus right now, well, with Luke Mitchell having passed Edge into the first chicane, Luke is now chasing after Sir Bertus at a significant rate of knots. He's already left Edge behind, Luke Mitchell has, and as we look back from the machine of Sir Bertus here, currently in P7, going through the first lens, where you can see Luke is just like a man possessed. He is not giving up. The first lap was a disaster, and so he decides to go for it again, and well, he's got a really good run out of the second Lesmo, and I think this is going to be a trivial mood up the inside before they even get to the Ascari chicane here. It's the long run down, of course. It's a good chunk of a mile down towards the Ascari chicane, and as they make their way up there, we're going to see Luke Doherty hold off D10 Piper into the chicane, albeit D10 did go for the move there, and Luke Mitchell has cleared Sir Bertus, so he's up into P7, and can he now get into that top 5 with only 1 or 2 more laps to go depends on how much time they've got left when they cross that timing line. Now up front, meanwhile, we can see that Sparks is still being pursued. The two British drivers going toe-to-toe here. Sparks are leading by 0.3 of a second ahead of Philo, and that will close up as they make their way down to the first chicane. And Matthew Lambert, meanwhile, really in a world of his own right now and trying to go for fastest lap, in fact, as he comes out of Parabolica. I think he's trying to get the bonus point there. Philo with that fastest lap of 55.2 so far, as we see that Martin really in a little world of his own and not able to catch up to Lambert, and Luke holding on to that P5, but behind we can see that Luke Mitchell not able to get into the slipstream of the P5 and P6 guys, but Sir Bertus having to go heavily defensive into turn 1 versus Edge in the battle for P8, and on the battle for the brakes we can see Sir Bertus going as late as possible on the inside into turn 1. He's on the outside for turn 2, but Edge hasn't got the ability to stay side by side and has to concede back to P9 as the Skyver is all over the back of him. And what about the guys further back? Well, we've got Decast in P11 and Gino Derba in P12 after his incident on lap number 2 at the second chicane. So no change there for those guys, as we can see that the real battle right now is the battle for P5 and the battle for P8. Luke Doherty and D10 Piper coming to blows into the second chicane, and T10 has got it done. He's got it done on the inside into 4, and Luke didn't have a comeback going into 5. What a late move, and Luke Mitchell carries through. He's on the inside and he's not able to get it on the first Lesmo. Luke Doherty says no, this isn't the 2-for-1 special today, as they all make their way through the second Lesmo here, and you can see just how much Luke wants to get one up on the other Alien League driver here. And behind them, well, goodness me, it looks as though we've had some penalties being dished out for track limits, and right now Edge finds himself in P8 as Luke Doherty battles with Luke Mitchell down into what is the Ascari chicane, and you can see that Luke is through. He went round on the outside, he's got the move done, but that was some bold stuff there by Luke. And in fact, Luke Doherty, well, I say Luke Mitchell, that was bold stuff, and Doherty had to be obliging to do it. But these two very good rivals, you can definitely see that, and I think this is going to continue into race number 2. Now, meanwhile, up front, going on to a 6th lap, it is Sparks who has cleared Philo by 1.3 seconds. So Philo has made a mistake somewhere as Matthew Lambert and also Martin crossed the line. D10 Piper right now with 10 seconds to go is going to be getting onto a 6th lap. But what about the chaps behind? Well, it's going to be Luke Mitchell who will be making it across. Who's going to be cut off? Who's not going to get onto that 6th lap? And I think everybody down to P10 has got onto that lap. Indeed, they have. And Sir Bertus burns a penalty erroneously and actually loses all of his momentum. That was a disaster for Sir Bertus. He's lost out so massively because of that, as we see that Luke Doherty battling with Edge into the first chicane. We're catching the rest of it, and he's having to defend. He was on the outside to inside into turn 2, and it's a drag race now through Curva Grande up towards the second chicane, and Edge on the inside, Luke Doherty on the outside, but this will put Luke on the inside into turn 4, of course, when the chicane begins. And I think Luke has got the momentum here. He just needs to nail that braking point as they make the way in, and Edge switches back to the inside. A very late move on the brakes here by Edge, and who's going to come out on top? It's Luke on the inside of turn 5, but Edge gets a little bit of a knock from the back of the Sky over there, which gives them the momentum to go forward. But neither driver wants to give up right now, and Luke especially, so he won't want these drivers getting past Mr. Doherty. He won't. Mr. Doherty 94 will want to be ahead of the pair of them, but they are giving him a good battle nonetheless. And meanwhile, in that battle for P5, we can see that D10 has broken away from Mr. Mitchell, which means that D10 is now on course to pick up a P5, and I think he'll be well chuffed with this one. As we look further back, and the battle for P7 rages on. Luke on the outside into Ascari, Edge on the inside. Who's going to give way? And it's Luke around the outside. He just about clips the apex curve, but coming out of the final corner, ladies and gentlemen, to pick up the win in race number 1 by a margin of 2.7 seconds, it is Sparks Theory from the Alien League, who will be finishing ahead of the Alien League's Theodore Philo, and then behind them it's going to be Matthew Lambert bringing it home for the League 1 guys, ahead of his rival Martin. D10 Piper, meanwhile, will be hold on to P5 at the end after a brilliant battle with Luke Mitchell, the League 1 driver here, showing the aliens what he's got, and Luke Mitchell comes across in P6, and in the battle for P7, it's Luke Doherty in the end who just holds off Edge after a drag race out of Parabolica, and it's Sir Bertus who follows in behind the Skyver for P10, and Decast and Gino finished a lap earlier. As we say congratulations to all our drivers, but to our race winner, Sparks Theory from the Alien League. Well, that was an absolutely fantastic race number 1. As we just show you the race results, so in the Alien League, it's pointed out that whilst Sparks was the overall winner of this race, Sparks was the winner of the Alien League as well, finishing 2.767 seconds ahead of his main Alien League opponent, TNR Philo. And in third in the Alien League here was Luke Mitchell, who finished in 6th place in this race. Whereas in League 1, our winning driver for that was Matthew Lambert, who finished in 3rd ahead of Martin JL09, and then D10 Piper rounded off our top 3 for League 1 with that P5 finish. The fastest lap there went for TNR Philo on lap number 4 of a 55.2. A phenomenal lap by Philo, and pretty much the same as what we saw in qualifying in terms of that ultimate pace. And I think Philo really relished being in the slipstream of Sparks' car, albeit I think a mistake on lap number 5 just cost him the ability to chase Sparks down on the final lap. And I think Philo's strategy throughout was to stay behind him. But into turn 1, it is worth noting that there was a little bit of an incident. I think it was very unfortunate. We can't get the playback right now on that incident. But I think what essentially happened was that Sparks broke a little bit earlier than perhaps whoever was behind him at the time. I think it was Luke Mitchell. I think Luke was expecting Sparks to break just as early as he did. I think it was about 2 to 3 meters earlier than perhaps he anticipated. So Luke, as a result, had to snap on the brakes. And he tapped the back of Sparks, which of course cost him a little bit of momentum because the way the pinball physics work in GT Sport. And then Matthew Lambert, who had a lot of momentum behind, ended up taking evasive action, but it wasn't enough for him to avoid bumping the back of Luke Mitchell, and that's what sent Luke flying off the circuit. There was a racing incident in terms of there was no actual intent to cause an incident, but I think in terms of stewards there will be a question about that, and we may see some steward in action afterwards, but I don't think there was any intention there. It's just unfortunate for Luke, but what a pushback and what a fight back from Luke Mitchell. That was one good recovery after the disaster at the end of lap 1, going on to lap number 2 as well, to recover to P6 with 2 major setbacks. And we look forward to seeing what's going to happen in race number 2. Now, of course, race number 2 is a reverse grid race, albeit what we will get is the reversed grid, if you will, of the Alien League finishing positions and the reversed grid of the League 1 positions. So the Alien guys will start up front, but what it will mean is, as we bring up our race results once again, is that Luke Doherty will be starting on P1, and alongside him will be Luke Mitchell. Then it will be Philo and Sparks in that order in P3 and P4. And then in League 1, it will be Gino Dermer and D-Cast who lead the field away there from P5, P6, and we count back from there. So we would expect that as a result, Martin and Matthew Lambert will be P11 and P12. And that's a little bit complicated as we say hello to WTF U1028 and also Andy F1104, 2 supporters by the looks of things of D10, and we hope you guys are doing well. And to all of you tuning in, I hope you're all doing well and you've been enjoying the entertainment so far, and we've still got a cracking race ahead. So we've got 1 minute to go before we get the second race underway, so we're just going to take that quick minute in order to do a quick recording of the race results in race number 1 for our stewards after the race. And from that point onwards, we will be moving on to race number 2. Alrighty, so that is recorded, folks. So as a result, we're just going to take a very quick sip of water. And if you haven't got any refreshments, now's the time to very quickly go grab yourself a... Well, probably not time to boil the kettle for a cup of tea, unless you've got a zip tap. But it's probably a good time to quickly get yourself a can of Coke, as we're going to get underway with race number 2. Here we go then, folks. Race number 2 coming right at you. Who is going to be our winner come the end of this race, the reverse grid race? So as we pan down to the grid then, we can see that this time it is Luke Doherty on pole alongside Luke Mitchell and Philo and Sparks behind. But watch out for Edge in P9. What could he do? The British driver seems to have a lot of pace on his capable hands. And it's lights out and away we go, and all of our drivers getting away relatively okay, although you could see there in the rear of your camera shot, it looked as though somebody really heavily bogged down on the second to back row. I'm not sure who driver that was, but as they make their way down in towards turn number 1 for the first time of asking, Luke Mitchell immediately going on the defensive here, and you can see Philo lifting out, and then Luke Doherty trying to cut around the outside. A very strong move by Luke Doherty, in fact, to get up to P2 already, although he will have cost himself a lot of momentum in the run up towards Curva Grande, and then now into the second chicane. But you can see all our drivers making it through turn 1 and 2 cleanly this time. I think they've all settled down after the experience of race number 1, and now they all charge through Curva Grande up towards chicane number 2. Into turns 4 and 5 we go, and who is going to win on the battle of the brakes, as we see Philo and Luke Doherty getting side by side initially, but they settle down into an order. It's line astern as they all come through. All our drivers make it through, and there's been a major incident at the second chicane between multiple drivers, Descriver, Sir Bertus and Martin all being involved in that, as we see that Philo has gone up the inside of Luke Doherty into the first Lesbo and has gained back the position he lost earlier on. And in this battle for the top 4 right now, our alien league drivers, of course, in this little battle, Gino Derber, who started at the head of our League 1 group, is still holding on and actually started to pull a little bit away, although D-Cast is trying to close that gap down. And behind them, we see that Matthew Lambert is already up into P8, all things said and done, gaining the misfortunes of others. And after that incident into the second chicane, I think that's where he's gained the most. So he's up into P8 and chasing after our top guys. As you can see, that D10 Piper at the inside into the Ascari chicane. He had a huge amount of momentum, did Piper. And now as they make their way across into the rundown towards what is Parabolica, it is going to be, I think, a long night for D10 Piper and Matthew Lambert to settle down and settle into an order. I think D10 won't want to let Matthew lead it all the way home. And Descriver right now in a side-by-side with Sir Bertus. Bertus on the inside, Descriver on the outside as they come down into Parabolica. And it is going to be, I think, Sir Bertus making the move up the inside. And he does get it done. So as they complete lap number 1, it is Theodore Philo ahead of Luke Doherty, who is battling with Sparks Fury. The two drivers side-by-side in the run down to turn 1, but settling into an order with Luke Doherty ahead of Sparks. Although Sparks is then going to the inside into turn 1 here. And I think Sparks thinks that Philo is going to break away if he can't clear Luke as they make their way through the chicane, and Mitchell behind just chasing after them both in P4. Gino Derber, the head of our League 1 drivers, ahead of D-Cast, who's 1.1 seconds back and gaining slowly by 4/10 a lap. Edge behind in P7, followed by Matthew Lambert in P8, who's still hold off D10 Piper, but Piper is really putting pressure on our League 1 leader right now, as Martin JL9 is also following that in P10, and Sir Bertus holding off to Skyver right now, as all of our drivers made their way to the second chicane, and Luke having to try and defend so hard versus Sparks, and I think he's trying to go so late on the break versus Sparks, then in the end he finds himself on the inside for the flick back portion of each chicane, and it's working so far. But you can see that Sparks is putting an unassailable amount of pressure on Luke, and already flexing as they go into Lesbo number 2 to try and put Luke off and try and make him think he's trying to go for a move. But Luke is not deterred, as we see behind it Gio goes sideways out of the second Lesbo onto AstroTurf and just regains the car, but that will leave him vulnerable to D-Cast, who is now on a mission to catch up. As we look back from our League 1 driver in this race as it currently stands, and D-Cast is getting closer and closer, and Gino goes defensive into the Ascari chicane, and it means that he's going to lose a lot of momentum, and D-Cast will be grateful for that, because it means he'll be in that slipstream as Sparks has cleared Luke Doherty, it should be pointed out. And now in the battle of the Lukes, Mitchell versus Doherty, who is going to win as they make their way down in towards Parabolica for the second time of asking. Well, Doherty is holding on for the time being, but you can see that Mitchell behind is really sizing up his opponent here, and I think he feels that he can get the move done in the near future, as Gino has started to pull away from D10 Piper. In fact, we can see that D-Cast has made a mistake, or something has gone wrong, as there's a load of gravel. And is that Matthew Lambert who spun out? I think it is, ladies and gentlemen. What on earth has happened there? So in the run down towards what is Parabolica, you're going to see from Matthew Lambert's perspective that Piper goes in deep on the outside, and D-Cast actually goes off wide here, and Edge, well then D-Cast gets it all sorts of, oh, and there's contact. So D-Cast had a bit of a tail slapper there, and that is very unfortunate for D-Cast, because he got a little bit of a tail slapper. He could get the car controlled, he knocked into Edge, and that's what sent Matthew Lambert flying out of Parabolica. Well, I don't think there's going to be a happy word to the stewards about that after the race from Matthew Lambert's perspective. He will not be pleased with that. He'll carry on racing all the same as Philo is now starting to be borne down by Sparks. In fact, a 1.2 second time penalty for Philo right now would mean Sparks only needs to finish up his rear end, and that would mean that Sparks inherits the win by default, as Doherty is still holding off Mitchell. And this battle for P3 in the Alien League, I think, is going to go down to the wire with 5 minutes to go, half the race to go, as we see behind that Edge is trying to put the pressure on D-Cast right now with that 0.3 second penalty for track limits on the previous lap being burned down. And Martin Jallo 9 just in the rear of the camera shot there as they all make their way down towards the Ascari chicane right now. A long run down here, of course, and Edge will be building up that momentum, but will he strike into the braking zone here? It could be anyone's guess. Now, I personally think, now, if I was in Edge's shoes right now, I would try to settle down and I would try to burn that penalty by lifting into those braking zones and use D-Cast as a means of towing me along to make up for the time I lose by burning that penalty, because the guy behind me, Martin, is going to have to do the same, and I think Edge just needs to play this a little bit tactically as D-Cast picks up a half-second penalty for track limits at Ascari on turn 9, and he tries to burn a little bit of it into Parabolica. Now, as they make their way onto lap number 4, we see that Philo here in the battle with Sparks, and I think Sparks is sizing up Philo here, and I think there could be a move down into the opening chicane. We see that Philo is on the right hand side, and as the camera flips around, it is going to be Philo on the outside, Sparks on the inside. They both come down into the braking zone, and I think this is going to be a standard move for the Sparks. Make sure to give Philo just enough space to exist into the corner, and Philo just simply settles in behind him. I don't think Philo had anything he could do, and with that 1 second penalty, I think it's the case of fighting against the tide. It's Sparks. He simply overwhelmed Philo into that corner, and that penalty just simply put the nail in the coffin. But still, Philo could come back if Sparks makes a mistake or picks up a penalty of his own. Then the whole dynamic changes. We see Luke Mitchell with a 1.5 second penalty and burning as much of it as possible into the braking zone for the second chicane there to try and chase after Doherty, who's also got a penalty of his own. And further back, Gino now feeling a lot of pressure for D10 Piper. And as we jump on board and look back from Gino's car right now, our P5 driver and our leader of the League One, guys, as it currently stands, he's got a face full of Piper chasing after him. He's got the police hot on his rear end as he makes his way through the first Lesbo. You can see that Piper just struggling to get the front end of his BMW settled as they make their way through the first Lesbo. The second Lesbo, it's the same story. He just seems to be struggling with a little bit of that dirty air, but as soon as he gets on these straights or into the more settled braking zones such as the Ascari chicane, this is where Piper comes on so strong, and I think Gino is wary of it because he's already put his car in the centre of the road before the slightly move back onto the racing line here, and he is going defensive quite prematurely because I think he really feels that D10 is a major threat as they come onto the final quarter of this race. Now, up front, it should be pointed out that Luke Doherty is burning a bit of his penalty right now as Mitchell has picked up another half-second penalty out of Ascari. These guys can't keep their hands off the penalties tonight. That is absolutely disastrous for their chase after the leaders. But Piper right now on the back of Gino as they make their way through Parabolica here. And as we switch the onboard and look forward from Piper's car, you can see just how close he's getting. He's going to be so close. I think he's going to have to run down into the first chicane here. He's only 2 tenths down as they make their way across the timing line. And you can see he has got a huge toe. Gino immediately pulls to the racing line. He pulls to the outside. I think he suspects that Piper's going to go for it regardless. And what he will try and do instead is go for a cutback. It's going to be Piper on the inside, Gino on the outside. Will Piper nail it on the brakes with the overspeed? I think he does. It's a nice break into the chicane. And Piper moves up to P5. And I say that Piper gets a lot of oversteer coming out of the chicane, and it means that Gino is going to have the run of the two of them as they make their way through Curva Grande and up towards the second chicane. And in the rear of your camera shot, you can see that Martin and Edge are chasing after these guys. Of course, these four all battling for League One dominance right now in terms of this race. And as they make their way to the second chicane, does Gino look for a move? He doesn't. I think he wants to use D10 to pull him away as he goes very slowly through the chicane compared to what Martin was perhaps expecting. And Martin picking up a half-second penalty there for cutting a little bit of the chicane, and Martin isn't going to be too happy with that one. He'll feel as though with that it was a case of he had to get off of the racing line to avoid the back of Gino's car perhaps, but still Martin will have to deal with that one and try and find a way to burn it. But it's a half-second penalty. It's not too aggressive, but up front meanwhile it's worth noting that Philo is all over the back of Sparks, and he is trying to burn his penalties whilst running so close to the back of Sparks. I think he can lean out his window and rub some of the dirt off of the rear window of Sparks' car, and I think Sparks will be grateful for that one because right now it's going to get down and dirty most likely in a minute with some overtakes, as we can see that Philo is charging after Sparks. In the rear of your camera shot, the battle of the two Lukes rages on as we see that Martin has passed Gino. Now, where did that happen? I suspect it was into Ascari. So coming down into the Ascari chicane, then Gino on the inside, Martin on the outside. Does Gino miss his braking point? Because he's lost 2 places because of what's happened. And Gino goes through here, and well, Gino going into the wall. I think he got hooked on the raised curb on turn 8 there, and the car just simply rotated so far to left that Gino was a passenger in his own piece of machinery. And the battle, that means, has now moved on between Martin and Edge, as we see that Gino is going to come across the line, and well, he's come across the line. D-Cast will finish the race in P9 ahead of Matthew Lambert. Deskyver at P11, just ahead of Sir Burtis in a drag race. But we resume then on the final lap of this one more lap to go for our lead group of cars. Sparks versus Philo, as we see that, well, hold on a second, and in the battle for P3, the battle of the 2 Lukes, where it's going to be Doherty on the inside of Curva Grande to go to the outside for the second chicane. Luke Mitchell and Dave Fax trade places here in terms of positions on track, and we can see that Doherty changing to the inside for the second chicane. Mitchell on the outside here, and will Mitchell try and go for a cut back into the corner? He doesn't quite get it as they make their way through the chicane. And Doherty still holding on for dear life versus Mitchell for that P3. He's not giving it up, is the man. As we can see in the battle for P6, Martin has cleared Edge and is now chasing after D10 Piper for P5. But I don't think there's enough time to go here for Martin to chase after D10, as he's got quite a gap to go. And I think the big battle to talk about right now is the one between the 2 Lukes. We talked about it all race, and they're side by side. It's a drag race down towards this Scottish chicane. Doherty on the inside, once again taking the defensive line wherever he goes. It belongs to him, that defensive line, and he's gone quite straight on the brakes there, and Luke losing all his momentum as Doherty just simply parks it on the apex. But there's now one more corner to go, and Luke has got the mother of all momentum shots as they come down towards what is Parabolica, and it looks as though Doherty's defending to the inside. And in that battle, we're going to see that it's Doherty who holds defensively to the inside. But meanwhile, coming across the line to win race number 2 is Sparks Theory ahead of Teodor Philo. Sparks picking up back-to-back wins tonight, and it's a drag race out. Parabolica, Luke Mitchell on the outside, Doherty on the inside. He's trying to shorten the run to the finish line, and it's going to be Luke Mitchell who comes home on the podium by 18 thousandths of a second. D10 Piper in P5, Martin in P6, Edge in P7, and Gino Derber rounded off in P8. Congratulations to all our drivers, but back-to-back wins for Sparks. What an ending there between the 2 Lukes, and finally, Mitchell found a way past in the ultimate drag race to the finish line. Well, how about that, ladies and gentlemen? A phenomenal race number 2. And, well, I think it's time for potentially some post-race interviews. But we take a look at those race results whilst we wait for some of our drivers to just cool down a little bit. Sparks bringing it home for the Alien League in first place ahead of Philo, and Mitchell just pinned Doherty to the line in the Alien League group for that 3rd place. As for our League 1 drivers, D10 Piper winning League 1 by a margin of what was in the end half a second over Martin, and Edge coming home in 3rd place, albeit 7th on track, but 3rd place for League 1. And Matthew Lambert, they're losing out massively with that P10 after that disastrous start. But not disastrous start, that disastrous moment coming out of Parabolica, where simply getting knocked through the instant where we saw that, I believe it was D-Cast losing control of the car and coming to blows with Edge and Constantina and into Lambert. Oh, goodness me. But still, the fastest out of 55.073, the fastest we've seen all evening, is set by Sparks through on lap number 4. But phenomenal racing as always. And, well, it's been another cracking round. We can see that Luke Doherty there not being able to do an interview tonight. And we're just going to say no worries at all. And we wish him all the best, as we do all of our drivers some fantastic racing throughout the night. What a cracking evening. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm assuming that no drivers are available. Well, no drivers are available for a post-race interview tonight. What we will do is we will roll forward, of course, to next week, and we come ahead to round number 5 in a week's time. And for those wondering, well, what does round 5 bring to the table? Where are we going to be and what not? Well, give me a second and I will tell you. We are going to be, for round number 5, in the land of, when it loads on my screen, of course, the screen that you can't see. We'll be heading to Spa. We'll be heading to Belgium for what will be a longer circuit, a much longer race in terms of it'll still be 10 minutes each race, but it's going to be a very long lap for our drivers to conquer. But what a fantastic night from all of our drivers, and what a great way to head towards the final race of the first half of the season. It's been a pleasure bringing this one to you as always, ladies and gentlemen. I have been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling. But until next week, the same time as always, remember to stay on track. Good night.